Would you rather own 100% of a little grape or 10 to 30% of a massive watermelon? Welcome to the Nine Doors Down Show, where we discuss anything and everything about commercial real estate and investing. Let's get it.
Nine Doors Down.
John Lopez.
Nine Doors Down.
Hi, this is Tony Rose.
Nine Doors Down.
Hi, this is Anthony Pimentel.
Educating, capital raising, networking.
Nine doors down. Nine doors down.
This is called a show.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the Nine Doors Down Show. Anthony, we have a lot of superstars in our network, and this gentleman that we're about to introduce is your A1 top-notch tier in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a good friend of ours, an old friend of ours. I met, I don't know, maybe before 2019. You know, very excited to have him on the podcast and excited for him to share his story for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one memory I have of him was him and his partner. We were having lunch here in Las Vegas, and I was just listening to the conversation, and I was like, holy smokes, I wish I had a record button, because this right here is a podcast episode. So this gentleman and his partner is actually one of the big influences on us to actually start a podcast.
Exactly.
This gentleman right here, he goes by the name of Powell Chee. Powell is a seasoned real estate professional with a proven track record in the acquisition and management of self-storage and multifamily properties. He has been the lead on 16 self-storage facilities totaling more than 5,000 units and 650,000 square feet, and a GP on 7 multifamily properties comprising over 1,100 units. Additionally, Powell holds 2 master's degrees and has achieved the prestigious President's Circle Award, a distinction reserved for top performers in a Fortune 500 company. He currently resides in Los Angeles with his family. For all our listeners at home, you may be stuck on the 405, or you're washing dishes, or in the shower, or you're on a plane heading out to Galveston, Texas. Let's welcome our special guest, Powell Chee.
Hey, appreciate it, guys. Thank you for the great intro. I love that intro. You know, it kind of brought back memories to me as well. You know, when I first met you guys, or over the different times that we've all met, you know, at different locations. And so super happy when I saw that you guys were doing a podcast and you invited me. I was like, oh, very cool. I'm excited to be on their podcast, that's for sure.
It's a big honor for us, Powell. You've helped Nine Doors Down tremendously. You know, we partnered up with you on 2 of your deals, and we just know that we're going to learn a lot from you, Anthony and myself, as well as our listeners, by just having this casual conversation with you.
Awesome. I hope I live up to it, you know.
Oh, we know you will. So
Sure.
we'll start off with this, Powell. Tell us about what was life like before Radiant Storage.
Yeah. So I'll rewind a little bit. So, you know, my career in real estate was really around 2015 is when I bought my very first single family house, right? And that was a rental, right? And so I lived in LA at the time. Now I live in Orange County, which is still Southern California. But at that time I lived in LA, and I bought that one in Kansas City. Sight unseen, never saw it, never, just kind of like one of those things that, like, at the time, I would say maybe 2 years before that, I was interested in buying real estate, but I really just didn't know how. You know, when you live in California, I've lived in Northern California, Southern California, and at the time you're looking at houses were like $500,000-$600,000, $100,000, right? And you're working a job and it pays you $60,000, and you're going, how am I ever going to buy a $600,000 house? That doesn't sound like it's ever going to be realistic. And then even if I have to save, $100,000, if you make $60,000, it's going to take you a long time to save up that much money, right? And so I just kind of thought, like, man, real estate maybe just isn't the path for me, right? But I was still very interested, still learning. And then I started being really keen on hearing about people's story who were investing somewhere outside of where they live. And that was a sort of a mind-blowing experience for me, that, hey, you know what? You don't have to live 2 hours from your rental, right? You don't have to buy 2 hours from where you live. You can, and it's great. If you can, then that's awesome. You might live in a great place. But if you don't, and you live in Southern California, you just don't feel like I can afford a $600,000 house in 2014. Kind of like, well, I might be able to buy something in a different city. And so, I started listening to more people, and just hearing the success stories. And I just thought, you know what? I'm probably as smart or as dumb as the next guy. And if they can do it, then why not? I can do it. You know, like they've been doing it for like 30 years. And now the technology is so much better, right? You can FaceTime people, or text message people. You got software that, you know, tells you when work orders come in and when people paid rent. I was like, people have been doing this sort of renting from, or, you know, owning a property outside of where they live for decades. And if they could do it then, I certainly feel like I should be able to do it now, right? So that brought me to 2015, bought my very first one. It was great. I actually, it did really well. I ended up selling it. I never actually saw it the whole time that I owned it. I've still never, you know, set eyes on that property. But about a year later, 2017, the beginning of 2017, I bought my first multifamily property. And that was because I quickly realized that the scaling up of the single family house wasn't going to be fast enough for me. You know, just the idea I had in my head at that time was I'm going to buy one house a year, and you know, by 10 years, I'll have 10 houses, right? Or maybe I accelerate at that time, and maybe I have 15 houses by that time. But I was like, after I bought my first one, and then I started, you know, seeing what the cash flow was like, and you know, just kind of gauging how this is going. I was like, I'm getting like $250 a month in like pure cash flow after all the expenses, right? I'm like, yeah, if I get 10 of these, that's still just $2,500. That's not gonna, you know, that doesn't change my life there, right? That's 10 years of not changing your life. I was like, no, this isn't gonna work. I have to go faster. So bought my first apartment building in 2017. It was a 40-unit apartment building in Indianapolis. Again, so lived in LA at the time, never. I did go out and visit that one, but I didn't live in Indianapolis, right? And then a year later, I bought another one in Indianapolis. And then 2019 came, I became a general partner on 5 other syndications, larger apartment buildings. And then the next year was 2020, right? 2020 was what happened was COVID, right? COVID happened to everybody. And at that time, I said, you know what, based on all the things that are all these unknowns, I really don't want to bring my investors into this, you know, into this situation. Like I didn't, you know, there was a lot of, who knows what the lending is like, who knows what the, you know, if people are gonna pay rent, delinquent and things like that. And so I just thought, you know what, based off of this, I'm not going to buy anything for 6 months. And so what am I going to do? I'm not going to just underwrite a bunch of deals and talk to brokers when I'm not going to buy their deals. That just sounds like a waste of time. So I thought, hey, let's go take a look at some other asset classes and let's just see if they're interesting. If they're not, then I could just kind of cross them off my list. But there's a bunch of asset classes that we thought sounded interesting, but let's just take the time right now to actually study them and figure out if it's something we want to do. So that was all 2020. Ended up buying our very first property of self-storage. So self-storage was the asset class I chose. Bought my very first one in 2021, very beginning, January 2021. And then since then have bought a total of 16 properties at this time. So that brings us up to current.
Welcome to the course on raising capital for investments. In this course, we'll cover the following topics. 1, analyzing your investment strategy. Number 2, discovering potential investors. 3, crafting your pitch. 4, securing your investment. 5, our cheat code. We'll round out the program with our very own cheat code for getting in front of investors and being ready to pitch your investment opportunities. Take action today. Visit schoolofninedoorsdown.com and learn to attract capital.
Powell, there's a lot that we could unwrap on that one, just on that alone. But so that way it doesn't get too far over people's heads.
Sure.
You did a lot from 2015 up until 2019, 2020. You know, with multifamily and self-storage or whatever, or just scaling, you always got to have a team or like a network. It's either you attend either a meetup, or what I see a lot of people doing is creating like a network for yourself. How did that play into your growth, the networking?
Yeah. I would tell you this. When I first started, I didn't know hardly anybody that was doing it, right? I didn't know anybody. It was just kind of like forums. I'd read on forums. I'd hear a couple podcasts about people doing it, but I didn't know any of these people, right? So it's just like all these people became my associates, but they didn't know me. I didn't actually know them. And in 2017, when I bought my first apartment complex, I was basically running that by myself, right? So I bought it by myself and ran it by myself. And after a few months of owning that, I realized, I was like, you know what, this is boring for me. Like I found it like not exciting, because I don't like to just sit in front of a computer and type all day, right? And that's not what I want to do. I want to like meet people. I want to get out and talk to people about what we're doing, and hey, this is, what about you? What are you looking for? And you know, getting excited about what they're doing. So I'm much more like a people person, and sitting in front of a computer all day and just listening to podcasts, and not, you know, like taking action, just the action that I knew by myself. I just found it to be like not what I wanted to do. So eventually I started my own meetup, and, you know, and it's one of those things that I started it because I really wanted to find out who else is doing the things that I was doing, and let's see if we can help each other out and learn from each other. So certainly for me, the team side of it, as well as meeting people and understanding like, hey, you know, getting some ideas from them, and you helping them out, and, you know, kind of a mutual reciprocal type of relationship with people has always been beneficial. I've always thought that's like one of the best parts of this. It's just being excited for other people and seeing what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I got to share a quick story about Powell. When we first met, was actually at a networking event, a meetup. I don't remember. I think you were just speaking. I don't believe you were hosting it, but you came out to speak on behalf of, actually, on regarding your 40 unit. And I remember before you started, we were chatting it up, and we're like, "Hey, I'm in Indianapolis too." And I think, I don't know if you remember, you asked me about a property manager. You're like, "Hey, who are you using?" And I was like, and I thought about it a little bit. I was like, we realized we're using the same property manager.
Yeah.
That we ended up letting go. You remember that?
Yeah, we both ended up firing that property manager. But yeah, it was interesting. I remember that. It was so I remember that meetup, Sarita's meetup, and it was kind of a branch of mine. And remember meeting you there and talking to you about it. I was like, oh, you got an apartment too in Indianapolis? So crazy, you know, talking about our you know, like we're just both kind of going, man, my property manager is no good. I gotta do something. Do you know any property manager? No, mine's no good either. Like I gotta find one. And like, who is your property manager? Yeah, it ends up being the same one. And so like,
yeah,
oh, yeah, okay. More reason, if I know that other people are not happy, more reason for me to get rid of them as soon as I can. So
yeah, it's kind of, maybe let's talk about that. Take me there. You know, we've had some difficulties. There's challenges being remote, and, you know, dealing with property manager. They tell you a certain thing, maybe they say something and then they don't do it. So what systems that kind of did you put in place, being a remote kind of asset manager? What were you doing to kind of streamline and make it more efficient for your, I guess, for renovations, or just to, you know, build up the revenue for the apartment?
Yeah, I will tell you, there's a number of things that I did during this time to like make sure that I was, you know, kind of going to run this property as best as possible, right? A lot of it is leaning on your property manager, right? And so if there's things that your property manager is doing, like maybe they have some maintenance and they're gonna turn a unit, I would want to, you know, verify that those are good numbers, right? And so I would try to source out other contractors and see if these numbers are comparable. And if they're comparable, then I'd just go with my property manager. But if they're just outlandish, then I was like, you know, it's something to keep track of what's going on with your property manager, because, you know, maintenance is a way for them to make money. So you know, they're going to want to have some maintenance on your property. So the more that they can do as far as maintenance goes, the more that money they're going to make. So you just got to be careful with that. I will tell you though, probably the best thing, although I set up multiple things over multiple years of like running this property, and I didn't always do a great job, right? And the one thing that I did that was probably the best thing, well, I'll tell you, the best thing that I did was I actually brought on a partner. And this partner lives in Indianapolis, or just outside of Indianapolis. And him understanding, you know, him being able to be there, being able to assess really like, okay, this maintenance, you're saying that we need to do this maintenance, it's going to cost us $2,000. Really, when I look at it, it's not that big of an issue. And him knowing a little bit of, you know, having a little bit of a construction background is very helpful. And him also having his own contacts where he can reach out to them and say, hey, if you were to replace this AC unit, how much it would cost, right? And then we get a chance to like get a second bid from a guy that he already knows. That was honestly the best thing that happened to me in this thing, was to bring on somebody. So sometimes we have this ideal of like, hey, I want to own this whole, I want to own a giant portfolio and I want to own it all by myself, and I get all the money, and then it's going to come to me, right? And then I'm going to, have this huge empire, right? And it's just going to be to me. It does sound great, and I guess for some people, maybe they can make it happen. They can make that as a reality. I would tell you, for me, I kind of specialize in a certain area of real estate, and of like, just like in general. And the operations part of it, the asset management, that part of it is not very exciting to me. Like the construction part and figuring out budget and working with contractors, I just don't really like it that much. I'm much more on the deal hunting side. So I want to go find a deal. I want to go find a deal and like do the negotiations and do all this stuff. And then, well, we get it, we close it. I'd like to move on and like go for more deals. Like I'm not the one that likes to get into the weeds of like what's going on with our projections and our budget and this and that, and stand on top of the contractors and stuff like that. So for me, having somebody else that could do that, and me being able to go now, free up time to go look at more deals, that was ideal situation for me.
I think you hit it right on the head. Everyone says that this game is a team sport, and it truly is.
Mhm.
And I could definitely identify with that, because I'm not the spreadsheet guy. I'm not even the guy that's like finding the deals. That lies heavily on Anthony. I like to know the deal that Anthony brings on board, or our partners bring on board, so that way I can spread the gospel to people out there. So I'm that guy who likes to connect with others, and just like I got the blabbermouth and try to market it out, right? But with that is like, I'm just amazed like how conscious you were to actually pivot from one asset class to another. There's a saying that me and Anthony will always share with our investors, especially when we're raising for your deals. We always told our guys, hey, multifamily is sexy, but self-storage is sticky. And if can you dive in on like why you made the transition to self-storage?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will tell you that so during the time we're looking at self-storage, and we're looking at, okay, so we're kind of comparing it to multifamily, because we had a multifamily background. So when I say we, it's myself and my business partner. So there were certain things that just were very attractive when it comes to self-storage, right? I would say that one of the things is that if you have enough multifamily, you have enough single family, you go through evictions, right? You just, eventually you got to evict somebody, right? And it's not fun, and it's costly, right? So let's just give a quick example. You go through an eviction process, right? It's basically 2 months of you not getting paid. I mean, if it's California, it's almost like 4 months, but just say it's somewhere else. 2 months where you don't get paid. The tenant is still living there. The tenant's probably not taking care of your place. So, right, doors are going to get slammed and all kinds of stuff. Windows maybe break, whatever. It's just, they're just not going to take care of it while they're not paying for it, right? Eventually you evict them, and you find out like, hey, I might have to hire a constable or something to get there and like forcibly take them out, right? And then it's just there's more costs and issues, and you have to get a moving company to move their stuff, and I don't know, it just ends up being a lot, right? And that's say 60 to 70 days before all that happens, right? And then by the end, you're kind of like, okay, well, do I take them to court now and try to recover these $3,000, right? In damages and back rent. It's like you can get a judgment, you can get all that stuff, but are you going to collect anything? I mean, what are the chances? I mean, probably really close to zero. So you're kind of like, I'm just out that money. And then when I do get possession of it, it's like a minimum, I got to clean it, right? And the minimum, I got to probably paint it, right? And so that's like at least like $600 or something right there, right? And not including whatever else there is in terms of damage, right? If you have to replace anything else like a water heater or whatever, you're already into the thousands of dollars. So, everybody that is in residential goes through that, and you go through it a lot. The more apartments you have, the more you're going to have to do that, right? Or your property manager is going to do that. But it still affects you as the owner, because those are times where you're not really getting paid and they're still living there. Well, in self-storage, it's different, right? The laws are different now. You don't go through eviction laws, you go through lien laws, All right. And lien laws are, I describe this to people as in, okay, most people in America feel like this about stuff, is that, hey, if I take my stuff and I put it on somebody else's property, they're probably going to charge me for it, or they're going to remove it, get rid of it, right? And everybody's like, yeah, I mean, you can't just dump stuff on somebody else's property and then not pay for it, or not have them just get rid of it, right? Well, that's not the case with residential. There's a lot of contention about like, oh, do you have the right to live, and rent too high, and rent control, and all these things. So there's a lot of contention depending on where you live and where you have your apartments. But in storage, nobody really feels like that. Nobody really feels like, yeah, you can't just park your junk on somebody else's space. So the laws are much more in your favor. It's like, I'll give you an example. If you go through storage, if somebody is late on day 5, so day 5 they're late, so day 6, we basically put a lock on their on their door. So we put an extra lock on their door, and then we kind of disable their gate code so they can't get into the facility, right? Now, and when they show up after a few days and they try to punch their gate code in, and it doesn't, and they can't get in, and they're like, hey, we can't get in. They call up the call center, like, hey, we can't get in. It's like, oh, because your credit card expired and we need a new credit card, and then we can get you in, right? But you can't lock somebody out on day 6 in residential. You can't just go over there to their door and then put a new lock on there and say, sorry, you can't come in here. I mean, that's illegal. So, you have things like that. And then, once we actually do evict, say, go through an auction process, we auction somebody else's property, their unit, their stuff that's in there. Any of that, if there's any money that's, when it's sold at auction, if there's basically any money there that it's sold for, all that money first comes to pay us back in terms of back rent, admin fees, late fees, and auction fees, whatever, cleaning fees. All that goes to pay us first. And if there's anything left over, then it would go back to that tenant. So we get made whole. I don't know. I wouldn't say all the time, but like, a good 50% of the time we get made whole. But even if we don't get made whole, and we just kind of that unit just sells for $20, we collect $20. But when you go there to clean it, that's all we're doing is now we're sweeping out the unit, right? Sweep, and then put a new lock on the door, shut it. That's it, and rent it out the next day, right? We don't go through all that big process of cleaning, painting, scheduling this and that, and all that. So it just in terms of that, I know. Sorry, this was a long-winded answer to your question.
We love this, Powell. It's fine.
Okay,
we love it.
It's fine.
There's some advantages that you see with self-storage versus, say, multifamily, which is what I saw.
So real quick, man, everything you're describing about multifamily, why you transition, I was getting flashbacks of my Indianapolis property, the constable, how did I get them out? 2 months paying legal fees, all that stuff. And you just talked about it. You get, with self-storage, you get a little bit back. But in addition to that, it's like you're not spending those legal fees, those, everything to exactly. Go to court and just, someone's sitting around in your property. And that's a really great point. And basically now from there, how'd you find your first deal? Like,
yeah, you know what? When it comes to deals for me, because like kind of like you guys know, right? I live in Southern California and have been looking all over the United States for deals. I use the sort of shotgun approach, right? Where I'm just looking for the best deal that I can find in a suitable area, right? The rifle approach would be much more of like, hey, I'm only going to look in Phoenix, Arizona, and that's it, or whatever city you choose. Like, and you're a market expert in that area, and you're there often. You know all the brokers, you know everything. That's a different approach because of me using the sort of shotgun approach and looking all over the United States and looking for what is the best deal that I can find anywhere. All my deals have come through brokers, right? So all of mine have started out with coming through brokers. Now, they haven't all been on market. I've had a couple that brokers have brought to me and said, hey, pal, this will go out to the market like in 2 days. But if you want to take an early look, I'll send this to you, right? And so we've gotten some of those, but they've all come through brokers. It hasn't been a direct sourcing method for me. It's just not, I just don't feel it's like feasible. And so it's just not something that we've really worked on.
Yeah, and that approach, because like everyone, when they first get into this, got to find an off-market deal. When that happens, you kind of restrict yourself from actually getting into your first deal. I don't think everyone needs to, you don't have to hit a home run right away. You just got to get on base, get those singles and doubles. And as time evolves, it's going to correct itself over time. But not only that, but you learn the lessons that makes you a smarter investor later down the road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know what? There's a lot to it of like just doing it, just doing it and getting in it. Right. This is why that very first one, like I said, bought through a broker, but it was a smaller investment. And we only reached out to, I think, 7 people that I reached out to. And this was all friends and family, people that I know, obviously, family members and just a few friends that, because at the time I was purely like a multifamily guy and I was just like, hey, multifamily. So I didn't want to like all of a sudden tell my network, hey, I'm investing in some other thing. I just wanted to do one first and then say like, okay, I really feel like self-storage is a great asset class, but let's go buy one and find out what we don't know, right? And then as we learn what we don't know, then we can figure out if we want to scale this up and go for more properties. So yeah, there is a lot to learn. Like there's a difference between learning on paper or learning, from forums versus actually owning the property, right? And that's where you're going to learn most of it, is when you actually own the property. So that's why we bought our very first one. Wasn't a home run deal. Obviously, it was the best deal we could find, and we were excited about doing it and happy we did it. And it's turned out to be a really good deal. But you never know, right? You buy it, you hope with the hopes that it's going to be great. And luckily for us, this one has been good.
Those broker relationships are key. And I was there to see your relationships with your broker. I think we were sitting in the airport in Midland, right? And at the time, your the 9P deal was only 3 or 4 P. Was only 3 or 4 properties, right? And then we're all about to board the plane, and then you get a phone call from the broker. It was like, oh, you know what? There's actually 6 more properties that are available from the seller. And so that just created options for you. Yeah,
it was one of those things that like, that was a broker that we had closed a deal with, and we ended up closing another deal with. And he was like, hey, you know what, Powell, they just gave me a call and said, hey, you're over there right now. Why don't you take a look at some of our other properties that I have, and so we went and took a look at some of his other properties that he had. And it's one of those things that like, having those relationships where the broker understands that, you are gonna close, you're gonna make sure that everything works well. Yeah, I mean, it's super important, right? If you take the approach that I do, which is using brokers, right? If you go direct to seller, it might not be that important, but for me, it is important.
Would you say that's a little bit more efficient to find to work with brokers on self-storage properties versus working with brokers on multifamily deals?
I would say the difference is that self-storage is a smaller asset class. Okay, so there's less self-storage. Like any big city probably has like I don't know, you take Las Vegas, probably has like 40, 50 something self-storage facilities there, but there's probably 1,000 apartment buildings, right? In that city. So it's a smaller asset class. So what happens is brokers have larger territories, right? So you'll have one that will have Vegas and Phoenix, right? They'll have like a couple, like a larger area, whereas your multifamily broker is just going to be for that specific city, right? They're not going to like really they're not going to get too many listings from other cities. I don't know, maybe occasionally they do, but for the most part, they're not really interested in other cities. There's 1,000 different multifamily properties in their city, and they're hunting all of those ones, right? They're not really looking at other places. But in storage, yeah, sometimes it's a state. So sometimes it's like their territories are divided by state. So you're like, some of them that we've worked with, it's like they have the whole state of Mississippi, the whole state of Alabama, the whole state of Louisiana, right? So
awesome, man. So maybe we'll dive in a little bit when you got into self-storage. Maybe talk about, share with our listeners on how you measured when you start underwriting, multifamily, then you start underwriting self-storage. Maybe kind of compare what measurables, like what you're looking for in self-storage compared to multifamily. Like what are the things to look for to see a potential deal or
so when we're looking, and I can talk to you kind of like what we're looking for, right? In the value adds. A lot of people ask, well, what's the value add in storage? Because I understand it in multifamily, right? You buy an apartment, it's all carpet and old kitchens and like fluorescent lighting, just things that don't look good. So you're like, hey, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to renovate this unit. I'm going to install some kind of vinyl plank, and then we're gonna paint it new colors, and then we're gonna put in some fixtures and maybe fix the kitchen and stuff like that. So you're kind of like, okay, I'm gonna upgrade it. And so based off of that upgrade, I feel like we can increase the rent to like $250 or so a month, right? But you're like, well, what is there in storage? It's not like you're fixing up the unit in storage. You're not fixing up the unit, right? You're not improving the unit. I'm not putting a new door there every time somebody moves out, or, so what kind of value add do you get in storage, right? I don't, where is that? Well, that is a big part of it. There isn't as much, generally, there's not as much CapEx that you would have as a multifamily for the value add pieces of it. But what I am looking for, I'll tell you, are these four things in terms of value add. I'm looking for low rents. Okay, so there's properties that we've bought that have been pretty full, right? They've been over 90% full. But when you start looking at the rent compared to the market rent, you're like, wow, these rents are really low. I mean, significantly low, because they haven't raised the rent in years. Could be like 3, 4, it could be like 8 years. It could, however long that they've just owned it, they just decided that they'd keep it full, but they don't want to raise the rent because they're afraid of people leaving. The second thing is low occupancy. So we bought properties that have, they're 65% full or 50% full. And when you buy them then and you look at the market, you're like, well, the market's like 80%, the market's like 90%. Why are this one is sitting at 50%? Well, you feel like, okay, there's certain things that we could do, whether that's advertising or cleaning up the place or whatever it is, that we feel like we can at least get the occupancy up to, maybe not above market, but at least below market. A little below market is where we kind of underwrite our deals. So there's those two. Number 3 is expansion possibilities. So we're looking for what ways can we add some revenue by either buying some land, or maybe there's a land that's attached to it. And what do we do with that land? Like perhaps it's right now used for parking, but the parking is just kind of scattered and all over the place. Well, maybe we can make it a little more organized, and then we can figure out some ways to either make it covered parking, or do we want to just organize it better? And then instead of fitting 10 cars there, now they can fit 15 because we organized it better. Or there's places that have some sort of like on the land, there might be a kind of like a little dead area where there's not enough space to build anything, but you could probably put down some portable units. So you can go buy some portable units and then put them down in the places where there's some space there. So those are the expansion possibilities. So we're looking for that. And then the last thing is operational inefficiencies. So we're looking at ways that we can cut some of the expenses that we see in the property, right? And so in what ways can we do that? We're looking at all different things as far as, ways that we can just reduce our expenses. And so those are the 4 things: low occupancy, low rent, expansion possibilities, and operational efficiencies. And we're looking for any combination or any significant of any of those 4.
That's great. That science is, I know our listeners are going to take heed to that. There's a lot of wisdom in there, Powell. Now, with the market conditions now in 2024, like say a broker is going to send you a deal next week, how is your strategy different now versus to say 2020, 2021, like your first round of properties in self-storage?
Yeah, I mean, it is a different market than it was in 2021, right? And so, yes, we do have to adjust to the market. Now, everybody sort of has to adjust according to what they feel is sort of going to happen in the near future. We ourselves, I don't know if we feel like there's going to be a downturn, but we feel like we need to prepare for a downturn just in case, right? So if we're going to buy any properties, I've told people that they have to be basically like grand slam home run type of deals, right? It's not a like, hey, this deal's pretty good, and it's gonna get us a decent return, but we have to do a lot of work and things like that. I was like, no, I'm not doing anything like that. It has to be like, wow, this deal is amazing, and it is flat out like something that we do not see come across. And if it's not that, then for right now, I'm just gonna pass, right? And even if it's like, hey, this is a pretty good deal, it's pretty solid, something we would consider maybe before. I'd consider it maybe a double, triple, something like that. And it's like, nah, I'm not gonna go for it. Like I have to be able to feel like this deal can survive, not only survive, but do really well if things go in a downturn. And if things are going down in a downturn, then deals that are like a double and things like that just may not be able to do well during that time. So that's us. We just want to make sure that we're looking out for our investors, and we are trying to do what we can to ensure that we're looking at the right type of properties for them in any kind of situation here.
Now, in referring to that, are you still actively looking right now? You're still working with brokers to try to find that grand slam? Because there could be, 2023 was a little rough for some people in real estate, right? Like in multifamily.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how it is in the self-storage side, but I mean, have you seen any, I guess, potential, like let's say any former managers that just needed some help and you know what I mean, like find those deals out there, take it out of their hands?
I haven't found any yet that we've really like acted on, that we really got close to close on those ones. So nothing yet that we feel is like that sort of, I don't know about once in a lifetime, but like, these type of unicorn type of deals where you're like, wow, that deal is just amazing. Like, haven't found those ones yet. It is still a hot market, so self-storage is it's become more popular in the last couple of years as well. There's more people that have come into the asset class, including myself. And so because it's become more popular, there's just more competition. And so, prices haven't really gone down the tubes yet. So just for us, it's like the values are still kind of high. Still don't want to bring our investors into that type of thing yet. So we'll hold off until we feel like we've got something really good.
That's awesome, Powell. So what is next on the horizon for Radiant Storage in the next 2 to 3 years? And then also, what is next for the big picture, like say 10 to 15 years from now?
Yeah, I would say the thing that is potentially coming up, and it's not really solid yet, but what we'd like to do is probably like roll up these properties into a one large portfolio sale at some time, right? So we have our 16 properties right now. If we get something this year, we'll see if we get something this year, but we could be adding, property number 17, 18, 19, 20. As the more we grow, the more we become a target for acquisition by some of the bigger players, right? And some of the bigger players will pay a bigger multiple according to what they're buying. So for us, what we see in the future is, let's try to continue to work on this to eventually work for a strategic buyer to come in and buy out the whole portfolio, right? Now, again, it's at the very sort of early stages of that, so I wouldn't say that there's anything like that's happening right now. It's not something concrete, but it is something that, as we grow, becomes more and more probable or to happen. So we've kept that open as an option. I usually don't tell investors that in the very beginning, just because we don't know. Like when we're buying property number 5 or 6, it's like, we don't know if we're really that close yet to where a strategic buyer would come in and look at our properties. But as we've gotten up to 16, I think now we're starting to just get a little bit of a interest, and so maybe this will start to grow as we start to grow as well. So that's probably where we're at.
I like what I'm hearing, Powell, because this is like advice coming from a seasoned investor, and it sounds like you do a combination of playing offense as well as playing defense with the market, and you're doing that just right now. Early in the podcast, you stated that you like going out to hunt for deals. What is your superpower when you're going out and hunting for these deals?
For me, I think it's like a subtle part of the communication, right? It's something that like, hey, like I tell people this is like when you're telling a broker, they have a property listed, say it's $10 million, right? They have 10 million. They have to be the ones. They're probably the ones that came up with that $10 million range. And so they're basing it off of what they feel like they can get. They got some input from the seller, and to come at them and tell them like, hey, I don't think this property is worth 10 million. I think it's worth, 7, right? It can be kind of insulting, right? To some people. And so you have to sort of be able to dance around the subject of, it's not really for me, but if I was going to come in, it'd be, this price, but in a way that you guide the conversation so that it's not just like, hey, you guys are just trying to throw out a lowball number and I don't really want to work with you guys because you guys are just a bunch of lowballers, this and that. You have to be able to way to, sort of guide that conversation. And so I think for me, that's one thing that I've been, I don't know, I guess I've worked on for years. My background was in sales. So, I had a decade of working for,
Damage
large
control.
companies and sales. And when people are like, hey, things are going bad with my current product, and then you're still trying to sell them on, to buy more, it's like, okay, well, you got to be able to have these conversations that are not just like, hey, I want to buy your stuff. And then, it's like, oh, that's easy. You got to have like a little more delicate conversations. So
Coming from a sales background, Powell, I could 100% relate. Like we had a term when I in the days of AT&T, it was like the most successful salesperson is the one that is really, really good at damage control. But as we're winding down, Powell, Anthony and I, we're going to have our lightning round for you. And these two questions might be the hardest question that you've ever been asked ever. So are you ready?
hey, I'm ready. I'm excited to hear them.
All right, here we go. So you're stuck on a remote island all by yourself, no family, no friends, your partner's not there, but you can keep your iPhone. And on your iPhone, you can only load up one musical artist or one album that you can see yourself listening to over and over again until the next person comes to visit you on the island. What is that one musical artist or what is that one musical album that you can listen to?
I like this question. I think the answer might, I don't know if it'll shock people, but I think that, I think my answer truthfully probably would be ABBA Gold. And I would be like, yeah.
Dancing Queen
Gold.
ABBA?
Dancing Queen, yeah. Chiquita, like money. I mean, I listen to a ton of ABBA. Like, I like ABBA and they're upbeat. So if I was on a deserted island by myself and you got to keep yourself upbeat and I listened to ABBA Gold, I don't know, many times, it's like, so I listen to that all the time. And so I love ABBA. I think they're great. And so that would be my choice. That would be my choice. It'd be ABBA.
Did you grow up with a bunch of Filipinos and gone to a lot of Filipino parties? Because ABBA and disco, I play that a lot for the generation that's like, 55 and 60 and above, like my parents' generation. So ABBA Dancing Queen was always in the mix.
Karaoke.
Yeah. I mean, see, you can dance, you can sing,
Yeah.
it keeps you in a good mood. I mean, all that stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I did some of my great friends back at home in the San Francisco Bay Area. Yeah. Filipino girls.
Oh,
that's hung out with them all the time. Yeah.
That explains it.
John's from the Bay. You know that, right?
Yeah. That makes sense, right?
That would make sense. Hey, we're ABBA fans here too. So in SoCal.
That was a great answer, Powell.
I wonder if your other guests are going to say ABBA. How many of your other guests are going to say ABBA? So that'll be a fun one to find.
You're definitely the first, and I love the answer.
Yeah. I wonder what you guys should have seen your face when I said ABBA. You go, ABBA?
Because I wasn't sure if it was ABBA.
Yeah.
ABBA.
Did you say ABBA?
No, we love ABBA.
Yeah.
But so my next question is, are you a tropical person or mountain region type of person? And if so, where's your bucket list? Where would you want to go? Whether it's just yourself or your family?
Yeah. For me, I've always grown up and I've always been sort of more of like the beach kind of tropical type of guy. Like I love playing beach volleyball. So people know me. It's like on the weekends, I'm playing beach volleyball and I love it. It's awesome. But as in my 20s, I learned to love the mountains a lot more and learn to love things like rain. Cause like, I was like, I used to hate the rain, but I was like, rain brings snow and snow means I can get to go snowboarding. And I love snowboarding. And it's just like amazing feeling when you're just like up on the top of the mountains and you're just like, wow, so beautiful up here. And just going through the snow. So I really miss it. I don't get to go snowboarding as often as I used to, but I've certainly learned to enjoy, just the different types of weathers. And so what rain has been fine for me. I lived in the Midwest for a while. So I lived in South Dakota, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. So I've had my years of cold winters and freezing cold winters and have to survive there. But Yeah, I don't know. In general, I would say the warm tropical area is something that I could get down with for sure.
Is there a specific country that that you would go, a bucket list?
You know, there, I would say I don't have one right now. I don't have one. I'll tell you this. I have not been to Asia. So if you guys can't see me,
I was
I'm
about to say
Asian.
that.
And then when I tell people that I'm Asian and I've never been to Asia, they're like, what? And so I was like, are you kidding me? So I've never been to Asia. So anytime that I can get to Asia, like I'm gonna take my chances and go
I'll
to
send you
Asia.
some Instagram post of the Philippines, El Nido, which is in my mom's hometown in Palawan.
Mhm.
You'll like that for sure.
Awesome.
I,
Awesome. I
I
love
can
it.
relate to you on that, Powell, because I was born and raised in California, the Bay Area. And when I tell people that I've only been to the Philippines once, and when I was 7 years old, they look at me like I've like offended them big time.
Yeah, I get
But
that too. I get the offensive and then dumbfounded. Like, what? Are
yeah,
you kidding me? Like, you kidding me? But yeah.
exactly. So
Uh,
Powell, man, before we sign off, where can our listeners get a hold of you? Any social media handles, emails,
yeah.
and websites that you'd like to share?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the easiest way, I guess, is like Instagram. You could go to my Instagram and, at Powell Chee. It's just my name. So at POWELLCHEE. Instagram. LinkedIn's another place that people connect with me as well. So I'm happy to connect over Instagram, LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. You can check me out there. YouTube, I have a little, once in a while, I put out some videos and I put them on YouTube as well. In terms of website, if you want to go to radiantwe .com, that's our website for more people who are on the investor side. If you went to Radiant Storage, you'd be trying to rent a unit from us. So Radiant We will is a little bit more for the people who are interested on the investor side.
Powell, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to hop on this episode with Anthony and myself. We thank you for spreading your joy of self-storage with us. We look forward to partnering with you on future deals. So when you do see that Grand Slam game winner, Powell, please let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. For sure. You guys are top on my list there.
And for those listening, please share our podcast. This is another episode of the 9 Doors Down Show. You could find us on all your favorite podcast platforms such as YouTube, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. And on that note, for the 9 Doors Down Show, we out.
Peace.